bar was that kind of special character that was just like a sunshine. She just shines on everyone.
We've already lost Christmas and Hanukkah. We are not giving up on Passover and Easter.
Israel is so special that people will come back here. It's a matter of time, and it's a short time.
You're listening to a special edition of the Jerusalem Post podcast, Travel Edition. Hi, David.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, we thought long and hard about whether we should carry on podcasting at the moment. We're recording this on November the 6th, exactly 30 days after the events of October the 7th, where nearly 1,500 Israelis were brutally murdered in an invasion from Gaza.
We decided to record tonight as our way of marking what in Hebrew we call the Shloshim, the 30 days of mourning. What we wanted to do was to look at the tourism, the travel industry from an Israeli perspective, to see what state we're in today in the wake of what's happened, and particularly because all of this tragedy has occurred, about a year after the sort of official end of the COVID pandemic.
We really thought long and hard about whether now is the time to talk about tourism. Israelis are not thinking about holidays. Israelis are not looking where to go at the moment. And Jews around the world are united with Israel and worried about their own safety. So we had to try and find a way of telling a tourism story, but giving it the gravitas it needs.
So amongst the issues that we will probably be discussing over the next half an hour, 45 minutes, will include the rescue, if you will, of Israelis who were living overseas at the time that the violence began, the exit of many foreigners and indeed Israelis from Israel after October the 7th.
And we're going to tell a particularly poignant story of somebody who lost their life in the October the 7th attacks. Somebody related to one of our previous podcasts. We'll get to that later.
In a second, we'll introduce you to our first guest.
So where do we begin, David?
I guess the best place to begin is with the official picture. Later on in the podcast, we'll hear from the tourism industry. But first, let's get a view from the ministry that deals with tourism.
We spoke with Ambassador Peleg Levy, who is an advisor to the tourism ministry. And he starts by telling us what the tourism ministry does in times of peace.
The Israeli tourism industry, as we saw in the last few years, we witnessed an impressive level of growth over the recent years. And 2019 was a record-breaking year, bringing more than 4 million tourists to Israel. And the industry accounts for almost 3% of the Israeli economy. Around 200,000 people around Israel are feeding out of the tourism industry, which injects some around $5 billion US dollars to the Israeli economy. The Ministry of Tourism in Israel is quite unique because it's not only in charge of promoting the tourism to Israel, but is also in charge of the infrastructure building of the industry, meaning hotels, tourist destination, etc. So it's quite a vast responsibility that the ministry has. And 2023 was supposed to be a new record year, surpassing 2019, the pre-COVID year, with a lot of new countries that are coming in with tourists, people from different countries that we were not used to see tourists from. So it was supposed to be a really groundbreaking year.
From a tourism point of view, the war couldn't have happened at a worse time. How was the industry on October the 6th, the day before the invasion?
2023 was really the year that the industry finally recovered from the COVID. Don't forget that the tourism industry was very badly hit during the COVID years, and it took a longer time to recover because, we were always planning a year's advance. So we were at the top of the game with people from different countries coming over with a lot of investment in infrastructure, changing a lot of rules, how to build hotels quicker, how to cut the red tape a little bit. You must have seen that. Israel was very present in the international market, not only the typical old-fashioned tourism coming here, which is a religious-oriented tourism still. 60% of the tourists who come here will come as a pilgrimage, either Muslim, Christian, or Jewish. But the 40%, the other ones that are really coming for Israel, not only for the history or for religion, but as a city break, as a new destination that offers variety of destinations, wine, desert, sea. Israelis understood that it's a real industry, and it really brings Israel into a wider club of countries that are leading in tourism.
October the 7th happens. Tourism finishes in Israel. What does the tourism ministry do?
The first industry to be hit was the tourism. October 7th, we had 130,000 tourists that day in Israel. Nowadays, we have 18,000. The Ministry of Tourism traditionally ceased to exist. It's only damage control, etc. But the minister decided that since we are handling the hotellery industry, he will jump in and fill a vacuum to assist the almost 250,000 Israelis that were evacuated in the first week. We have NEMA, the National Emergency Agency, and when they deal with evacuating people, they evacuate them to schools or matnasim and then try to find them a place. So we said we cannot have those pictures of people that suffered in Sderot or Be'eri or Kiryat Shmone, and then they have to go to a school and to sleep on the floor. It's unacceptable. We just enter into the vacuum. Minister Katz, he was the Minister of Labor and Welfare, so he has this point of view, and we can utilize the ministry that's out of job to help in those fields of getting the people to respectable lodgings.
At some point, we are going to have to start reintroducing the idea of tourism. Let's go back for a minute to COVID. When there was no international travel, you pivoted and said to the Israelis, let's do blue and white, let's stay at home, let's go to the hotels, let's go to the zimmers, the log cabins. Is that something that you are envisioning being the initial entree back into the world of travel and tourism for Israel?
Yes and no, as a good Israeli answer. It's a completely different situation now because it's not COVID. These days, the rest of the market, the rest of Israel is working. Banks are open, stores are opening, everything is working, kind of working. The only industry that really fell down is tourism. The rest of the world continues as usual. It's not that the COVID that we were part of the world, that all companies ceased to fly and the hotels were empty. This is not the case. Our neighbors, especially Jordan and Egypt, are affected as well, but the rest of the world goes on. So therefore, there are two things. First of all, in order to save a little bit the hotel industry, those evacuees are in the hotels and the hotels are receiving money, so they don't need to close. We have a few thousands of people still working. Now, when we are talking about coming back, there are three stages of the day after. Because now there are 18,000 tourists here. Okay, half of them are Jewish that came to visit their families. But we are starting to see already delegations of what we call sympathy delegations, especially from Jewish communities, from evangelists, from churches. We're going to see those delegations coming back. Secondly, will be people that will choose Israel as a destination, as a way of supporting Israel. Let's say a Jewish family from Liverpool or Manchester, instead of going to Palma, okay, this year we're going to go to Israel. The rest of the tourists, it will take time, between 6 months to a year. So yes, we want a lot of what we call local tourism in order to recover. But don't forget, Israelis in the last 2-3 years were very upset with the hotels industry here because of the prices. Most Israel felt that we are paying too much for a product. So I'm not so sure that's going to happen again. On the other hand, we saw that the hotellery system really put themselves under alunka, as we say in Hebrew, mitachat alunka, and they are sacrificing a lot.
Under the stretcher.
Under the stretcher, yeah.
This time of year, November, there's the World Travel Market in London. And I know in the past, Israel has been one of the big sponsors. It sponsors a lot of events at that travel market. At the moment, Israel is out there showing the world the atrocities of October the 7th. How do you pivot from there and start telling the world Israel is a safe place to come?
It was very hard to decide whether we are in the fair of the WTM, the World Trade Market. In the end, we were not there because several decisions. How can you sell Israel now? It's a little bit ridiculous. We thought about maybe putting the pictures of the hostages, but we felt it's not there. In the end of the day, the decision was made by us because the security-wise, the local authorities didn't guarantee us the safety of the pavilion and the safety of the people visiting there. And therefore, we decided not to be there. I think that it was a wise decision. A lot of people from the industry traveled to do the meetings, but we didn't have the cover of the pavilion. There were supposed to be two pavilions, one of Tel Aviv and one of the ministry. But for example, in December, we are going to be present in another big fair in Los Angeles, in California. What we are trying to do, and basically the industry is doing, is keeping the contacts, explaining people that it's a temporary thing. This operation or this war is completely different from what we knew before. But in the last 20 years, we had cycles of violence with Gaza that influenced tourism, short term, but we know how to do it. We have a recovery plan or the day after plan, which is very detailed. We do continue to invest in marketing, etc., because we cannot disappear. We are active in very professional meetings of the United Nations World Tourism Organization. Israel have a lot to sell in terms of travel tech, and we continue doing that in these troubled times.
Ambassador Levy, do you have a final optimistic note about tourism in Israel?
Israel is here to stay, and as a destination is so special that people will come back here. It's a matter of time, and it's a short time. We receive a lot of empathy and sympathy from our partners in the tourism world. They understand us. We even have joint webinars with Ukraine, Azerbaijan, and Cyprus that are living something similar to what we are doing. What we are asking the tourists is don't cancel, just postpone it. And I think that most people will hear our call and will support us.
If anybody has any questions about coming to Israel, about when is a good time to book, and they want to get an official governmental response to their concerns and hopefully their positive questions, is there a way they can reach out to you?
Yes, first of all, we have the Ministry of Tourism offices both in the US and UK that you can contact. And also you can reach us by WhatsApp to 972-55-972-6931. Again, 972-55-972-6931.
Ambassador Peleg Levy, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for taking your time to deal with the travel industry in Israel.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition. Mark, about a month ago, 5 weeks ago, you and I had all sorts of plans to bring content to the podcast. We were going to go to Brazil. Obviously, that didn't happen. And the evening before that, we were going to go to the official opening of a hotel in Tel Aviv.
For those of you that listened, about 2-3 months ago, we had a podcast where we visited 2 new hotels, 2 M Gallery hotels, one in Jerusalem and one in Tel Aviv, called the Elkonin. We met a very wonderful man called Morgan, who hosted us for the evening. Morgan, welcome back. Would you like to reintroduce yourself and tell people who you are and a little bit about the hotel?
Thank you for having me once again. My name is Morgan Mondoloni. I am the general manager of the Elkonin Hotel here in Tel Aviv, in Neve Tzedek. I am 34 years old, as you can hear also with my wonderful accent. I'm from France. I arrived in Israel 5 years ago, and joined this wonderful project about 2.5 years ago. We reopened our doors last February. We're talking about the very first hotel of Tel Aviv that opened its doors in 1913. And I'm really, really happy and delighted to be its general manager.
About a month ago, we were going to come to the grand opening of the hotel. The hotel had had a soft opening. We'd been there. We spent the evening. We sat in the wonderful Epoch restaurant with you. We were looking forward to this party, a party that we would probably have to sleep off on the plane to Brazil, but it was going to be a fantastic evening. Obviously, the events of October the 7th changed that. But for your team, October the 7th was particularly close to home. Can you tell us why?
Unfortunately, in these awful events, one of our employees got murdered. Her name was Bar Tomer. She was at the party in the south, and together with 260 other souls got murdered by the Hamas terrorists. It's indeed a situation that we are dealing with since day one here with the team. It's been affecting us ever since until today. We pay tribute to Bar in many ways that I will be able to tell you about. It's just, as a general manager, it's not something that you expect to leave one day. You feel responsible for each and every one of your employees. And one day you learn on a phone call that one of them was murdered by terrorists. I was not raised in this country. I arrived, like I told you, 5 years ago, and it's very tough for the team as well. We are trying to hold on. We have psychologists who come to visit us once a week so that the team and everyone can talk about it. We were a lot also with Bar families, wonderful people from Kibbutz and Shemer. We, of course, were at the funerals. We went to the Shiva. Right now, we're taking some initiative to pay tribute to her and to the person she was, the wonderful person she was.
Let's talk about Bar. She was central to what you were doing at the hotel. You just opened, you're recruiting people. That was part and parcel of what she was brought in to do, was to create this multinational staff that you had brought together. Tell us a little bit about the time that you spent with her character.
Bar was 25 years old. She was HR assistant, human resources assistant, and she joined the team on December 1st, 2022. So she was really part of the beginning and the opening of the hotel. And among the challenges she had to face was to recruit a team of about 100 people, which is a lot, especially when we know how tough it is to recruit talents in hospitality business. But she did that. She was never afraid. She tackled every challenges. And Bar was that kind of special character that was just like a sunshine. Whatever room she was entering in, she just shines on everyone. She was like a medicine for bad days, some sort of pill that you would always like to have with you and to feel better. She was that pill. Would really need that medicine right now. The most we can do right now as a team and as a hotel, as a restaurant and as a spa is to try to be the person she was.
Beyond what you just said now, have you got events planned, or is there going to be some sort of memorial?
We are going to do a few things. We are going to have some sort of a memory book with all the pictures that we had together here at the hotel. We will have all our team members add a little memory note and signed it. The point is for us then to give that back to the family, to let them know, because they know Bar personally, but I also want to know how great their daughter, their sister, their niece was as a professional. Second one that we are actually going to hold on Tuesday. Bar was really special. She had some sort of a ritual before going to the gym of always adding a little bit of pleasure. And so she always used to eat ice cream before going to the gym. On Tuesday, we're going to have a gym class. And before the gym class, we're going to have an ice cream bar for all our team members to pay tribute to her and to talk a little bit about her. The third initiative that we're going to have, I am to fly to Dubai in a few days, together with all the general manager of Accor luxury hotels around the world. And we are going to pay tribute to her as well during a ceremony for the whole world to see and to remember her as a wonderful part of our hotel and of our company as well, Accor.
The war has obviously devastated tourists coming in. There are very few flights into Israel. How has the war affected the hotel?
But just like you said, Mark, we have no tourists anymore. Everyone has left. And I remember that when we were looking at the beginning of the month of October until the eve of the attacks, we were to have the best month of the year, really. And in about 72 hours, all the tourists that we had in the house left. Right after, during let's say the second week of October, all our reservation, international reservation, and even local reservation got cancelled. There was a real question that we asked ourselves was, should we stay open or should we close? Many of our competitors have closed their doors. We wanted to hold on. Obviously, with not all our facilities, we had to close our spa and to close our restaurant and only offer our guests bed and breakfast with an option for all the dining. But I wanted to save as possible the strategic elements in the workforce. We unfortunately had to send 60 people home out of 80, but we managed to keep about 20 team members with us. We're trying to help like we can. We have, for example, the Dover Tzahal, which is the speaker of the Israeli army, at least the French one that is doing all the explanation for the French journalists, that is doing his duplex always here at the hotel. We are welcoming the Bat Sheva dance company that are now trying to get back to work, but unfortunately, as most of them are young people and living with roommates, so they don't have a shelter at home. So the hotel owner, Dominic Romano and Adriana Weiss, they asked us to welcome them on us. And that's what we did. And they're with us already 2 weeks. They can enjoy a safe environment. And of course, we are also welcoming some displaced families from the northern front and the southern front.
Where do we go from here? It's difficult to see past the end of each week at the moment with the war progressing, with not knowing exactly what next week brings. Where do you see a way out? Where do you see us in 6 months' time, the hotel in 6 months' time?
I can talk for the three of us, because the three of us come from abroad. Here, there is a huge lesson for us from the Israeli people. We should learn, and I am learning it right now the hard way. It's about resilience. No matter what's happening in the country, they keep moving forward. On the short term, this is what we have to do. Yes, it's tough to look more than a week, 2 weeks, 1 month and to know what's going to happen. But even if it's day by day, then every day is a victory and we need to keep moving forward, just like the Israelis do. About the hotel and about the company, I am confident that by the end of this war, the Middle East, if not the world, is going to be different and is going to look at us and understand that we fought for justice. And I'm sure that it will attract even more travelers, because all the efforts that are being made right now in explaining why we are fighting and who we are fighting, even though we see crazy demonstration around the globe, I know that they will pay. Those efforts will pay, and we will be victorious. And also, as a company and as a country.
Morgan Mondoloni, as we say in English, from your lips onwards, may that prayer be realized. General Manager of the Elkonin Hotel in the Neve Tzedek in Tel Aviv, thank you so much for sharing what's in your heart and what's in your mind.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
A very, very sad story, David.
When you turn off the microphone and you see the person's shoulders sag, like the weight of the world is on their shoulders, and there's nothing that you can say, there's nothing that you can do that's going to take that pain away. For Morgan, for his team, and for all other Israelis and Jewish people and supporters of Israel right now.
Since we recorded the interview, I have been to the hotel and I lit a candle at Bar's memorial.
Let's look at another angle to this story, which is the travel and tourism, those people coming into Israel, those people going out of Israel, and how what happened on October the 7th affected that industry.
We are now going to talk to Mark Feldman, who is the Jerusalem District Director of the Dizen House Travel Company, to find out what is happening in the travel and tourism industry in Israel.
Let's go back to that Black Saturday, that's 7th October. We started getting reports early in the morning that something was going on. The fog was unbelievable. This was the first time in over 30 years that my religious clients called me. This has never happened. Never. Not for death of a parent, not for a grandparent. My religious clients called me. They had flights for that Saturday night, and they said, Mark, I'm sorry to disturb your Shabbat. Please cancel. We knew that Motzei Shabbat would be a tsunami of phone calls. Everybody calling. My staff literally worked 10 straight days, 20 hours a day, handling people that were stranded, primarily abroad. They wanted to get back to this country, bringing over soldiers. And once all the foreign airlines stopped flying here, dealing with hundreds and hundreds of tourists that had to get out, that wanted to get out. We've never seen anything like it. We were exhausted. The only good thing about it is because we were working so hard, we were not listening to the radio. We weren't following social media. We didn't have time to hear all the horrendous stories that took place. This went on for 10 days, nonstop, 24/7. Word of mouth, people started asking for help. I'm stuck here. Will you help me here? What about this? We'd never seen anything like this. And I've got 17 agents. So it was really a massive production, and they performed admirably. I finally made them, after 10 days, stop to decompress because it was just getting to them. It was not ending. What's happened here is unlike COVID, this is only happening in our country. You know, the United Airlines is still flying, just not to Israel. British Airways is still flying, just not to Israel. It's dealing in a different manner than we've ever had. Anybody who had a leisure trip planned, whether they had a son or a grandson or a daughter in the army or in the police, canceled immediately. Everybody. Nobody said, gee, this is the time to go to, Athens to do some sunbathing. What didn't stop was there were a lot of business travelers who did not have a personal connection who continued to fly.
Clearly, there are virtually no foreign tourists who are going to come in now. But in Hebrew, we have a word which is lehit avrer, which I guess the literal translation is to get a bit of a breather. Is anybody turning to you and saying, maybe not now, but maybe in a couple of months' time, we actually do want to leave Israel. We'll do it through El Al because that's the company that's flying. And we'll go to one of the places that they are currently flying to get a break. Or am I completely naive and that is not happening at all?
Not happening in the least. We've got groups going to Australia, to India in next year. And the people are afraid to commit to that, not because of anti-Semitism, because there's almost a guilt involved. What will happen, and you alluded to it, when the reservists come back, they will go abroad to decompress. They need the decompression. The average person living in this country does not need it. But you raised a point that I have to talk about. This is the first war we've had where we sent a lot of people out of this country to get away, not to decompress, not for a breather. You have to understand, people were scared. People begged to get out of here. And we understand whatever trauma they may have, it is not our decision to judge them. But we have had people in Tel Aviv, in Rishon, in Jerusalem. We've had people in Ma'ale Adumim, which for 31 days has not had a single siren, who are positive that there's going to be an uprising in Jordan and they will all come over there. So we've never had this before. This fear that they don't know what's going on here. Will Hezbollah attack us? And that we've never had. So I can't say that they left for a breather. They left really out of fear.
Have you found many of the people that left out of fear have come back?
No. They're not leaving Israel. They're not leaving. In other words, if you study the history, after the Yom Kippur War in 1973, there was a large emigration from this country. People that just felt they couldn't take it anymore. These people live here, work here. They're taking sabbaticals or some way arranging it. They're planning on coming back. They just don't feel physically safe. It runs the gamut from the north to the south to everywhere. And it runs Anglos, Israelis. The one common denominator would be younger people, singles, people with kids. They're just really scared. And it's hard for us who are living here. It's hard for us who have been through wars and terrorist attacks and excursions and operations. This affected people a lot more.
Until October 7th, two of the main exit or access points for Israelis were Istanbul and the United Arab Emirates. They were getting dozens of flights a week. In the case of Turkey, those flights have stopped. There are still some flights going through the United Arab Emirates. Is anybody flying that route right now?
Airlines don't fly to just be nice. They fly because they can make money. I know they're flying because when I'm sending tickets to Singapore or to Melbourne, that's the only way out. There's a lot of cargo being brought in, goods and services. It's something that we never imagined. It was incredibly popular going to the UAE by itself as a destination. But like Turkey used to be, as you alluded to, it's become a transit point. Nobody's stopping in Dubai and saying, let's go to the Burj Khalifa. They're switching airports to go beyond, to the east. Almost exclusively, this is business people. It's not people who are saying, gee, there's a war going on, let's go to Bangkok and, check out Phuket and Koh Samui. These are business people or going for family reasons. As I said, this is not leisure travel.
Before Mark asks the next question, I should just point out to you, the listener, that we're recording this on November the 6th. So in terms of those companies that are currently flying, this is the date at which we're making that point.
Are there solidarity missions coming to Israel as well as business travel? And how much of the lost business does that cover?
We're down incoming travel 80%. 80%. The vast majority in the first few weeks were solidarity missions. They came in, congressmen, federations. We don't get the church groups at this stage, but we get all the Jewish groups come in 2 or 3 days, staying actually in Jerusalem because they felt Tel Aviv was unsafe. They come in, they meet, they make the rounds, and they go back. It's very good for the economy. It's also good for us. You're not getting business people flying in there. What we are getting in, though, are Americans primarily who want to volunteer. We brought in 2 farmers who want to come down and help pick the crops. We've got a lot of Americans who have said, what can I do to come here? The numbers are small, but the fact that they're coming to a country that's at war is very, very impressionable. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling for the Israelis.
We want to try to be somewhat optimistic at the end of our interviews in this episode, in the hope, and of course it will happen one day, that people will be returning to Israel. How can they find out about your company if they want to book through you?
My email is mark, M-A-R-K, .feldman, F-E-L-D-M-A-N, strudel, Zion Tours, ZIONTOURS.co.il. You can reach me 24/6. You can ask questions if you've got tickets that you haven't been refunded, if you need assistance with hotels, volunteers. We didn't talk about all of our tour guides are completely out of work. We're already planning the day after. We already are planning, because we have a large internal department here. We want to start having buses going down to these communities, not to see the horrors, but to help those businesses. We want to go on the state road and help them. We think it's important. I'm not saying we're not going to take our tourists to Masada. For the few months afterwards, they need to see how many people financially suffered. I can't take them to hospitals, but I can take them to the small businesses who have been hurt. And that's what we've already set up to do. We're a resilient country. Your listeners should not assume that we're folding over. We are a resilient country. How quickly we will recover? We've already lost Christmas and Hanukkah. Whatever groups that were coming and gone, we are not giving up on Passover and Easter. I can promise you that. We are planning Passover and Easter to be filled to the brim, to have stories of tourists talking about the tax he wouldn't put on a meter. We will go back. We will not capitulate to terror.
Mark Feldman, Jerusalem District Director of Disney House, thank you very much.
So there you have it, the thoughts of governmental representatives, the hotel industry, and the travel agency world. I guess in many ways, all of them coming to similar conclusions right now. I guess, Mark, it's very difficult not to come to those types of conclusions.
These are tough times. As you said at the beginning of the podcast, a lot of people thought we've seen the back of COVID, revenge tourism, it's good times ahead, and we're at that point now where things are difficult. For some of the hotels, the government relocating families there is giving them hope and giving them income. But it's much more than finance. It's about how the country is at the end, how the people returning to the hotel industry from the war will be affected, how easy it is to bring customers back to Israel afterwards.
Those are the challenges. We hope you found the words of our guests interesting. We want to say thank you to Ambassador Peleg, to Mark, and to Morgan. Mark, let's try to finish on something a little bit hopeful, optimistic maybe. Any thoughts from you?
I think my thought is I'm going to try and be optimistic and look forward, to take myself a couple of months forward and hope that some form of normality returns. We'll never forget the people that we lost. We'll never forget what happened to this country, and the people affected will never forget their colleagues and their friends that they lost. But we have to go on with life and we have to move forward. And for me, travel is a way of relaxing, recovering, improving your mental health. I think it will be a very important part of life after the war.
And from the point of view of the industry here in Israel, I think one thing I can add is that thankfully, for most people in the world, memories are short, which as far as the tourism industry's recovery is concerned is good news. And yes, it will take time, it will take months, but tourists will come back to Israel, and hopefully there will be a brighter, more peaceful environment in this part of the world. And that, as Morgan said, maybe will only attract more and more visitors.